Fred. You have to shuffle in. Yeah, we'll sort that out. Just with that remaining barb, I need someone to be watching him. Right.
Can you get me some water, please? I know I'm an evil.
I'm not here to judge you, mate, but I haven't got any. We're in to nowhere at the moment, so. Right, we'll sort it. Let's get you rolling, all right, and get you there.
Let's get in barbs now.
On one spring's evening back on May the 31st of 2021, 26-year-old Bethany Vincent and her 9-year-old son Darren Henson, known to his family as DJ, had been getting ready to head to bed for the night at their family home in Louth, Lincolnshire, up in the north of England. DJ had just been dropped off by his dad Darren Henson a few hours prior, and although his parents had split, they continued to have a good relationship. Kieran was involved in DJ's life. Just before 8 PM, a FaceTime call was made to Catherine, Bethany's mother. She described the call as this. DJ had been excited to be in his new Chelsea football shirt. He was happy. You could tell that when he was with Bethany, he was surrounded by love. The FaceTime call was ended after goodnights were exchanged, and sadly for Catherine, that would be the last time she ever spoke or heard from the two ever again. Just over 2 years prior, in March of 2019, Bethany had met a man by the name of Daniel Boulton on the Tinder dating app. It had been a while since she put herself out there going on dates, and with her son DJ being her priority, she didn't really have the time for it. You see, when DJ was 2, he had been diagnosed as having autism, so him being a priority was all the more prevalent. The relationship between Daniel and Bethany was said to have started out as great. He got on well with DJ, understood his condition, and was described by Bethany's family as a smart lad who suited Bethany well. As the months passed, family started to notice that Bethany became distant. She wasn't her normal self, and she even gave up her job, and this was all because of one man, Daniel Boulton. Away from prying eyes, Bethany and Daniel's relationship had soured. He became increasingly violent towards Bethany and DJ. He even claimed that DJ, who had been medically diagnosed with autism, had been a naughty child. When the family eventually seen the pair, he was described as possessive at this point, and on multiple occasions had lashed out at Bethany's parents. But in November of 2020, after Daniel had assaulted Bethany for wanting to put DJ first, she built up the courage to contact the police and get a restraining order put in against him. Again though, the abuse both Bethany and DJ had suffered at the hands of Daniel was horrific, and it all seemed like it stemmed from the fact that DJ had extra needs and needed extra attention because he was autistic. Shockingly, Daniel tried to blame DJ's autism as the sole reason as the relationship turning rocky, saying that it was contagious. By this point, he had developed a hatred towards DJ for a condition he was born with. So Daniel was removed from the house and moved into a hostel accommodation in Skegness. He was also hit with an injunction where it prevented him from contacting both Catherine and Bethany, but he repeatedly broke it. Harassment about the injunction itself, hundreds of social media messages, unannounced and uninvited visits to Bethany's home, and overall constant trying to get in touch with the pair were just some of the things listed as to how he broke the injunction. But it was getting that bad that another court injunction had to be put in place, and Bethany was due to be relocated in early June of 2021. Furious at the injunctions being placed against him, and in his head, DJ being the sole cause of the issues, Daniel was overheard by workers in the hostel as saying that he wanted to wipe out the bloodline of Bethany's family, and a friend claimed that only 6 weeks prior to May of 2021 that Daniel said he wanted DJ dead. He would go on to tell workers he didn't mean it though, he said it out of anger, and it was his dissocial personality disorder. He had been diagnosed with the disorder prior to this story even coming to light. However, for some reason, it doesn't seem as if the threats were taken seriously. From reports gathered, I can't really see anything about police noting that the family were in immediate danger after those comments were made, and although another injunction was put in place, that didn't stop Daniel from continuing to break it. On the 30th of May 2021, the harassment that sadly became the norm at this point continued. But in hindsight, some of the messages sent on this day really rang alarm bells compared to others. In one Facebook message, Daniel sent the following: "There's going to be a nightmare on Home Street," a clear reference to the Nightmare on Elm Street slasher movies where serial killer Freddy Krueger butchers tens of victims. The reference is clear because Bethany didn't live on a home street, she lived on High Home Road. So with this mindset, Daniel, in a sense, was a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment, and this definitely showed in the week leading up to the 31st, as nearly 900 Facebook messages were sent, but the content of those messages has never been released. I'm assuming that Bethany wouldn't have engaged in a conversation with Daniel, which infuriated him, so he was about to embark on a 28-mile journey from his home to Bethany's. According to a timeline, Daniel was spotted at various locations on the 31st. He was spotted taking the coastal route from Skegness to Mablethorpe and was seen at a car boot sale in Salt Fleetby where he bought a yellow toy digger. Further sightings of Daniel were along the B1200 near the village of Stoughton before entering Louth, where Bethany lived. Once arriving in Louth, he was spotted loitering on St Bernard's Avenue, roughly 1 mile from Bethany's home, and then closer on Newbridge Hill, quite literally around the corner. But he doesn't engage with the house yet. He goes to the co-op store a short walk away. From here, he continues to loiter around the area. More messages would be sent to Bethany's phone. Again, I'm assuming no reply is given. So just after 8 PM, just after that FaceTime call is made to Catherine, Daniel approaches the house and kicks the door in, thirsty for blood. Bethany and DJ fell victim to a horrific knife attack at the hands of Daniel, and although we'll never truly know what happened once inside, the post-mortem examination can paint you a somewhat of a picture. Both suffered similar injuries, blunt force trauma to the head and body on top of multiple stab wounds. Both had been stabbed in the heart. Some stab wounds had been 20 centimeters deep, which meant for DJ it more than likely went through his whole body. And I think what really paints a picture most is the fact that little DJ had injuries consistent with him being chased up the stairs by a person armed with a knife. After the brutal attack, Daniel calmly walked outside to the garden, smoked a cigarette before noticing members of the public had started to approach the house. This agitated him slightly, so he called out to them, telling them someone had been stabbed inside, and then poof, disappeared into thin air. Once emergency services arrived at the scene, both were found dead. Bethany in the front room, whilst DJ was found in his bedroom. The scene was horrific, something out of a slasher movie, and to make things worse, a 9-month-old baby was seen crawling around. Paramedics say the baby was unharmed but clearly distressed. For some reason though, the relationship between Bethany and this 9-month-old baby isn't given, so I don't think the child was a part of her immediate family.
Now let's get more on the news that police are hunting for a 29-year-old man in connection with the deaths of a woman and child in the Lincolnshire market town of Louth. Our reporter Harry Parkhill is close to the scene. Harry, bring us up to date with this search for the individual that police are trying to find.
Yeah, well, essentially, the police were called to this property on the corner of this junction here in the sleepy market town of Louth in Lincolnshire only last night at 8:30 after a call from an ambulance. This is after a woman and child were found dead. Now, as you mentioned, a man's being searched for, 29-year-old Daniel Boulton, a manhunt across the town to try and find the whereabouts of this man. And police are telling people to not approach this man and to call 999, quoting the incident number on the police website. All of this happening in, as you've already mentioned, a small market town, not a big city. It's certainly shocking people here on the streets here in Lincolnshire.
Yes, and are the police advising people to take care, to stay indoors, anything of that nature, Harry?
It's not quite as extreme as staying indoors, but they are certainly saying that if you see the man that they've released an image of over the last few hours, to basically not to approach the man, to call 999, to basically let them know straight away this is a manhunt. They're trying to find the whereabouts of this man, 29-year-old Daniel Boulton, who's wanted in connection with what's happened here overnight. And of course, as I mentioned, a woman and child here who've lost their lives in tragic circumstances.
And it's very early days, and I don't know whether police will have released any details yet about those two victims, Harry.
No, they haven't released any details about the two victims just yet. But as I've mentioned, already people are laying tributes down over by the scene guard over there. There's a couple of bouquets of flowers behind me. I don't know whether you can quite see that. And police standing on guard. 4 police cars here blocking off a whole junction here in this small town, just in front of a supermarket or two around the corner. So it's clear the police are taking this seriously and standing guard here on the duty after these tragic deaths overnight.
Harry, thank you very much. Harry Parkhill there.
So a manhunt was on for Daniel. It's believed that he fled the scene 1 mile to the west in a place called Hubbard's Hill. Here he forced his way into an empty cottage, going on to steal some alcohol, clothing and food in the process. The following day, Daniel left the cottage and approached an elderly lady who was seen walking her dog. At the same time, an off-duty police officer had been walking his dog and was fully aware of the appeal. Remember, police did say that he was a danger to the wider public, so the police officer sprung into action where he attempted to apprehend Daniel. Blows were said to have been exchanged between the pair before Daniel made a run for it, but the police officer caught up with him in a matter of seconds. During the second confrontation, Daniel pulled out a knife and stabbed the officer in the leg. The officer then stopped pursuing. Daniel fled, but not before the officer called for backup. Within minutes, the area was flooded with police.
You have to shuffle in. Yeah, we'll sort that out. Just with that remaining barb, I need someone to be watching him. Right.
Can you get me some water, please? I know I'm an evil.
I'm not here to judge you, mate, but I haven't got any. We're in the nowhere at the moment, so. Right, we'll sort it. Let's get you rolling, all right, and get you there.
Let's get him in pubs now.
In the end, Daniel had to be tasered, but ultimately he wanted armed police to shoot him dead. So Daniel was charged in relation to the murders, the assault on the police officer and the burglary on the cottage. He initially denied the charges that were brought against him, but slowly admitted the charges other than the murder charge. Then, on the second day of the trial, he changed his plea from not guilty to guilty, but it was on the lesser charge of manslaughter, on the grounds of his mental health issues. The prosecution didn't accept this though and still pushed for the murder charge. Daniel never gave testimony in court, but it should be noted that he had been diagnosed with dissocial personality disorder in 2004 and had been seeing health professionals since. It's thought that as recent as 2017 he threw himself in front of a car in an attempt to kill himself. Talking of the events of the 31st with a psychiatrist, he said that he was in autopilot mode. He was there, but it wasn't him who committed the crime. The prosecution, however, rejected this claim, saying it was a cold, calculated plan to murder 2 innocent people, one of them being a child, because of Daniel's hatred for that child and his autism. In the end, he was found guilty on all charges that were brought against him, and he's to serve 2 life sentences with the minimum term of 40 years. 2 life sentences with the minimum term of 40 years is very rare in the UK. The judge said it was handed down due to Daniel being a threat to the wider public, and he showed no remorse. He wanted to increase the chance that he would never get to see the light of day ever again.